17% of people who nearly die report experiencing something impossible. They leave their bodies. They see bright lights. They meet deceased relatives. They watch doctors working on them from above and describe details they couldn't have known. For decades, science dismissed these near-death experiences as hallucinations from dying brains. But new research from NYU, University of Michigan, and major hospitals worldwide is revealing something that changes everything we thought we knew about death. Your consciousness might not end when your heart stops. And what happens in those final moments is more real than anyone imagined. Death has always been the ultimate mystery. The one experience every human will face but nobody can prepare for. Is there an afterlife? Does your consciousness simply vanish? Do you experience anything at all? These aren't just philosophical questions anymore, they're scientific ones. And the answers coming from cutting-edge research are absolutely shocking because it turns out that death isn't what we've been told. It's not an instant off switch, it's a process, and during that process, something extraordinary happens. Dr. Sam Parnia is an associate professor of medicine at NYU Langone and director of critical care and resuscitation research. He spent decades studying what happens to consciousness when people die and then get brought back through CPR and resuscitation. His research involved thousands of cardiac arrest survivors who technically died before being revived, and what they reported changed his entire understanding of death. These people described experiences so vivid, so consistent, and so detailed that dismissing them as simple hallucinations became impossible. Here's what they say happens. When your heart stops and you cross the threshold of death, you don't immediately lose awareness. Instead, many people report feeling themselves detached from their physical body. They float above the scene, watching doctors and nurses work on their corpse below. They can see everything happening in the room with perfect clarity. Some describe hovering near the ceiling. Others say they moved through walls into other rooms. They watched their loved ones in waiting areas. They saw medical equipment being brought in. Details they had no way of knowing while unconscious and clinically dead. One woman who went into cardiac arrest during surgery told her doctor afterward exactly what he'd done during her resuscitation. She described the tools he used, the conversations between staff, the specific actions taken to save her. The doctor was stunned. She'd been unconscious with no heartbeat. Her brain shouldn't have been functioning. Yet somehow she witnessed everything from a perspective outside her body. This isn't one isolated case. It's thousands of similar reports from people across different cultures, religions, and backgrounds, all describing the same basic experience. After leaving their body, many report moving through darkness toward an incredibly bright light. Not painful or blinding, comforting, welcoming. Some describe it as pure love in visual form. Others say they entered a tunnel with the light at the end pulling them forward. The light doesn't frighten them, it draws them in, makes them feel more peaceful than they've ever felt in their entire lives. Many say they didn't want to return to their bodies because the sensation of being in that light was overwhelming in the best possible way. Then come the encounters. Dead relatives appear. Parents, grandparents, siblings who passed years earlier. They're young, healthy, radiant. They communicate without words, directly mind to mind. Some survivors report these deceased loved ones telling them it's not their time yet, that they need to go back. Others describe being given a choice, stay or return. Those who chose to return often did so reluctantly because the experience of being dead felt better than being alive. The peace, the love, the absolute certainty that everything would be okay. They didn't want to leave that. Many also report experiencing a life review, not watching their life flash before their eyes like in movies, actually reliving every significant moment, feeling not just their own emotions but the emotions of everyone they ever interacted with. the joy they brought others, the pain they caused, every action shown from all perspectives. It's described as deeply meaningful but not judgmental, more like understanding the full impact of your existence, seeing how your choices rippled through other lives. Some say this review helped them understand what mattered most and what was trivial. For decades, skeptics explained all of this away easily. Dying brains release chemicals. Lack of oxygen causes hallucinations. The experiences aren't real, just the brain's final misfiring as it shuts down. Except the research kept contradicting that explanation. Dr. Jimmo Bortigan and her team at University of Michigan studied patients removed from life support. They monitored brain activity in the final moments. What they found was shocking. In 2 patients, there was a massive burst of brain activity right at the moment of death, not random chaos. Organized, coherent activity in regions associated with dreaming, consciousness, and perception. Dr. George Moschauer, founding director of the Michigan Center for Consciousness Science, called it a neuroscientific paradox. How can vivid conscious experience emerge from a dysfunctional, dying brain? According to everything we thought we knew about consciousness, it shouldn't be possible. Yet it's happening. The brain isn't just shutting down passively, it's doing something. Creating experiences more vivid and memorable than anything people experience while fully alive and healthy. Survivors consistently say their near-death experience felt more real than normal reality. Decades later, they remember every detail with perfect clarity. More clearly than their own wedding day. More clearly than the birth of their children. That level of memory consolidation requires significant brain activity. Yet these experiences are happening when the heart has stopped, blood pressure has dropped to 0, and the brain should be offline. Some cardiac arrest survivors report experiences lasting what felt like hours, even though they were clinically dead for only minutes. Time dilation, expanded consciousness. These aren't characteristics of a dying, oxygen-starved brain having random hallucinations. They're characteristics of something else entirely. Then there's the verified information problem. Dr. Jan Holden, president of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, researches what she calls veridical perception. That's when someone who's died receives information during their near-death experience that's later verified as accurate despite having no normal way to know it. Woman during surgery goes into cardiac arrest. While unconscious and being resuscitated, she later reports seeing her doctor's actions from above the ceiling. Describes who was in the room, what they were wearing, what equipment they used, conversations they had. All confirmed accurate by the medical staff who were there. Another case involved a cardiac arrest patient who floated through walls into the hospital waiting room and saw his family members. He described their exact positions, what they were wearing, who was crying, what they said to each other. His family confirmed every detail. He was clinically dead in another room at the time. How do you explain that with oxygen deprivation and brain chemistry? You can't. These experiences include accurate information about events happening in locations the person couldn't have physically perceived. Their eyes were closed. Their brain wasn't processing visual information normally. Yet they saw things, and those things were real. The materialist explanation says consciousness is produced by the brain. When the brain dies, consciousness dies. End of story. But that model is breaking down under the weight of evidence. Dr. Parnia's research shows that when your heart stops, your brain cells don't die immediately. They begin their own gradual death process that takes days, potentially longer. During that window, something we call consciousness appears to continue functioning, not the brain producing consciousness. Consciousness continuing even when the brain isn't working properly. That suggests consciousness might not be a product of brain activity. It might be something else. Something that interacts with the brain but isn't created by it. This isn't mysticism, it's scientists following evidence. Dr. Bruce Grayson spent 50 years researching near-death experiences. He started as a complete skeptic. After documenting thousands of cases and seeing patterns that couldn't be explained by conventional neuroscience, he changed his position. His book, After, explores what the evidence actually shows about consciousness and death. He's not religious, he's not spiritual, he's a psychiatrist who looked at data and realized the materialist model doesn't account for what people experience. Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose proposed a theory called orchestrated objective reduction. They suggest that consciousness operates at the quantum level in structures called microtubules inside brain cells. These microtubules contain quantum information that doesn't disappear when the brain stops functioning. When you die, that quantum information isn't destroyed, it's released back into the universe. Your individual consciousness, the thing that makes you you, continues existing in some form. It sounds like science fiction, but it's based on quantum mechanics and serious theoretical physics. Not all near-death experiences are peaceful. About 15% report distressing or terrifying experiences. Feelings of intense fear, darkness, hostile presences. Some describe hellish visions or feeling trapped. These negative experiences often occur in people who weren't expecting to die, who died suddenly or violently, or who had unresolved trauma. Researchers classify them into 3 types. Inverse experiences where typical NDE elements feel threatening instead of comforting. Void experiences where people encounter absolute nothingness and feel abandoned. Hellish experiences with frightening entities and environments. These people often struggle for years afterward trying to process what they went through. The fact that some experiences are negative actually strengthens the case that they're real, rather than comforting hallucinations manufactured by dying brains to ease the transition. If brains were just producing pleasant chemical experiences to help us die peacefully, why would some people have terrifying ones? The variation suggests these are genuine experiences with different qualities depending on unknown factors. Not just standard brain death processes playing out the same way in everyone. What changes people most is losing their fear of death. Almost universally, near-death experience survivors say they're no longer afraid to die. They saw what's next. They know death isn't the end. This has profound psychological effects. They become more present, more focused on relationships, less concerned with material success. They report a greater sense of purpose, increased compassion, feeling more connected to other people. Many completely reorient their lives based on what they experienced. These aren't temporary changes. Studies following NDE survivors decades later find the shifts persist. A single experience during clinical death permanently alters how they live. The American Medical Association doesn't have an official stance on near-death experiences. But hundreds of studies have been published in respected peer-reviewed journals like JAMA and The Lancet. Research institutions at University of Virginia, NYU, University of Michigan, and internationally are actively studying this. It's moved from fringe pseudoscience to legitimate scientific inquiry, not because scientists suddenly became less rigorous, because the evidence became impossible to ignore. When 10 to 20% of cardiac arrest survivors consistently report similar experiences that include verifiable details about events they couldn't have witnessed, you have to investigate. The implications are staggering. If consciousness continues after death, everything about how we approach end-of-life care changes. How we think about what it means to be a person, the nature of identity, memory, and subjective experience, whether there's meaning and purpose beyond physical survival. These aren't just abstract philosophical questions, they're practical questions about medical ethics, how we treat dying patients, and how we process grief. If our loved one's consciousness doesn't simply vanish at death, that fundamentally reframes loss. Dr. Parnia is clear about what he's not saying. He's not claiming people's brains keep working after death in any normal sense. He's saying that the consciousness, the entity that makes you who you are, your thoughts, feelings, sense of self, doesn't become annihilated just because you've crossed the threshold of death. It appears to persist and continue functioning even when the physical brain is no longer supporting it. How long it lingers, he can't say, but the evidence suggests it doesn't immediately end. This is a very different picture than what many of us were told science would show. The assumption was that as neuroscience advanced, we'd discover consciousness is entirely explained by brain chemistry and electrical activity. Instead, the more we study death, the more evidence we find that consciousness might be something beyond the physical brain. Not magic, not supernatural, just not yet understood. Like electricity was real before we understood physics well enough to explain it, consciousness might operate according to principles we haven't discovered yet. The recent death of philosopher Daniel Dennett, who spent his career trying to prove consciousness was an illusion, might signal the end of an era. The hardline materialist position that nothing can exist beyond the physical is losing ground, not because scientists are becoming less rational, because reality keeps showing us that our models are incomplete. The evidence from near-death experiences, terminal lucidity in dementia patients, verified out-of-body perceptions, none of it fits the standard model. So either all these people are lying, hallucinating, or mistaken, or something else is happening that we don't fully understand yet. What actually happens when you die? Based on current research, here's what we know. Your heart stops, your breathing ceases, but your brain cells don't die immediately. During that window, many people report becoming more conscious, not less. They leave their bodies, experience profound peace, encounter deceased, loved ones, undergo life reviews, see lights and environments that feel more real than physical reality. Some have terrifying experiences instead. After being resuscitated, they remember everything with unusual clarity, and the experience changes how they live for the rest of their lives. This happens to millions of people worldwide across all cultures and belief systems. The question isn't whether these experiences happen. They do. The question is what they mean. Are they glimpses of an actual afterlife? Are they consciousness operating outside the brain temporarily? Are they sophisticated brain processes we don't understand yet that create these experiences? Scientists are split. But what's clear is that death is not what we thought. It's not an instant off switch where you simply cease to exist. It's a process. And during that process, something profound occurs, something that feels real to the people experiencing it. Something that leaves verifiable traces that challenge our basic assumptions about consciousness and physical reality. You're going to die someday. That's the one certainty. But maybe it won't be what you feared. Maybe it's not oblivion. Maybe it's not the end. Maybe what waits on the other side of that threshold is something we can barely imagine from this side. Light, peace, reunion with those we've lost, understanding of our lives' meaning. Or maybe it's something else entirely. But one thing the evidence strongly suggests: consciousness doesn't end when your heart stops. Whatever you are, the essential you that makes you who you are, it continues. How long? In what form? To where? Those are the questions science is now seriously trying to answer. And the answers might be the most important discovery humanity ever makes.